In the past 12 weeks of GM Genius, we've covered a lot of concepts that can help you make better decisions. So let's do another recap of what you learned most recently to make sure you've got it down before we close out the season. Weeks 10 through 12 were about helping you fine-tune your fantasy game. We covered how to think about the media you absorb, be aware of how you research, and test your information. When we talked about the media, we brought up the availability effect. This means that when an event easily comes to mind because it provokes our emotions or gets replayed a lot, we think it's likely to happen again. Knowing about it can help you be aware of how the media you absorb affects how you see the world and what you think will happen. To avoid the availability effect, make sure that the information you use to make predictions represents what's realistic to happen. It matters to fantasy because sports media outlets love to report on and replay unusual standout events. Don't assume these events are the norm. Instead, check whether the stories match up with what the statistics suggest is likely. Because hearing about an event a lot doesn't always mean that it's going to happen a lot. When evaluating information, we also need to watch out for confirmation bias, which happens when we prefer information that will confirm our existing opinions. To avoid confirmation bias in fantasy, first identify your existing opinion about a player. Even if you have a big list of reasons why you feel this way, know that there may be more to the story. Instead of making the facts fit the story you've already told yourself about a player, you can avoid confirmation bias when you try to look for the whole truth about him. So remember to ask yourself, what information would it take to change my mind? Before you let a bit of information convince you to make changes to your lineup, do the information test. Examine whether your information is relevant, reliable, and significant enough to justify acting on it. Remember how this example measured up? ESPN reports that starting wide receiver Julio Beckham Jr. sprained his ankle in practice and will not be playing in this week's game. You are considering his quarterback for your lineup, which makes the information relevant to who you should play and how you expect them to perform. It's reliable because there's photographic evidence of the injury on a major sports network. And it's significant because the backup wide receiver on that team isn't very good. The situation is different enough that you should probably find a new quarterback. This bit of news passes the information test, so you'd want to act on it. Alright, we have 3 weeks left for you to put these skills to use in the competition. So what are you going to do to have a strong finish?